Okay, so thank you for choosing my presentation. I must tell you, I'm a little bit stressed because it's first time I'm doing any public speech in English. So please take this into your mind. So the subject I prepared for you today is about actual software development patterns that could be used in order to improve our tests. Our tests that we create in our day-to-day work. So my name is Paweł. I'm coming from Poznań in Poland. I'm working for OLX. Before that, I had 5 years of experience in test automation, mostly in testing and mostly in test automation. I did some web-based app testing and also some C# Windows native apps. I worked for banking, fintech, and right now what I'm doing in OLX is online classifieds. I love cats, and I invite you to visit my cat's Facebook fan page. It's really nice. It's in Polish, but there are a lot of cat pictures, as everyone likes this. So briefly about OLX, I think you should all at least heard the name because we are present here in Ukraine too. This is classified platform that allows user to sell their used goods online. As OLX, we do this, but OLX is also OLX Group, so we have some verticals platform like Automoto, Autodom. I think Autodom is also present on Ukrainian market. There's also Let Go mobile app, which I think it's quite big success as far as I heard here in Ukraine right now. So in Poznań we are doing we are developing and also testing OLX platforms for 10 countries. So mostly these are Central and Eastern Europe countries like Poland, Ukraine, Romania, and Bulgaria, but also we are developing platform for Portugal and 2 African countries, Angola and Mozambique, and also for Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, so more to east than Ukraine. We are quite a big platform, so we are serving at all about 86 million monthly users, and which are posting around 3 million ads monthly. Our backend stack is PHP MySQL, so standard. We are using PHP 7, which we believe it has really not a good marketing, but since version 7, it's really nice, really efficient, and we believe it's really not that. It's different language that it was in version 4 or 5. So we are doing this. We are also using Docker right now only for our local development environments, and for testing we have plans as we are pursuing our way to continuous integration, continuous delivery. So we are using also Docker, and we plan to use it also on production and some staging environments. About the platform, so the core code base is common for all the countries, but as OLX was acquiring some companies like Slando or Tablica in Ukraine or Tablica in Poland, there are sets of features that are, for example, present only on Ukrainian market, like deliveries that you can order from the app, or, for example, Kontakcie login, which is only present in the markets where this platform is popular. We are using feature flags, so we can enable or disable this. And as I said, we are right now using Docker only for local stuff. About our testing stack, so we are using also PHP as a development language. Bhat and about remote runs, it's all done by Jenkins, so pretty standard configuration. Later on, I will describe you some numbers and give you some details about continuous integration and our way to continuous delivery. Yeah, so we are using PHP Bhat, which contains Gherkin syntax, so most of our tests are in Bhat and standard PHP unit. About the numbers, I gave you numbers about users, so we also have quite nice numbers about our tests which are executed during our day. So as we are doing continuous integration, it's like it's average because it can depend, as some of the tests are executed on demand, for example, on pull requests, or developer can do it by themselves. So it's not exact number, but about 700 test runs daily, which executes about 23,000 tests daily. We have about 2,500 scenarios. It's like a little bit tricky. I will describe you this later, because we have less scenarios, but as we are doing it for all countries, so I multiplied this, because there's actual scenario which contains different code underneath, so you can count it as a different scenario. About continuous integration, so right now we are, in my opinion, doing quite decent continuous integration. So we are testing each commit which is in the master and each pull request. This is like a core subset of the functionalities that is tested tested on the continuous integration server. We have also, we're triggering also by time schedule, we're triggering full automation for each for full subset of tests, like hourly hourly, and on pull request developer can request. It's integrated with GitHub, so when developer creates a pull request, he can just put a comment which subset of the test he wants to run. Then it's passed to Jenkins, which gives after the run gives back the results. So then they can merge it or not. And what's really nice is that each of the run contains full development environment, so Docker-based environment about testing, both about application and about testing. So we are building this for each run. It allows us to parallelize everything, even on a test level and also on a test run level, because each test run contains their own environment. About the Jenkins, so we have 8 machines with which we are able to execute, establish their free executors, so we can do like 24 parallel test runs, and each country and each suite contains separate separate environment, and the results are reported back to GitHub, as I told you. So that was like a brief introduction about how we are doing this in OLX. So let's go to the point. So everyone showed pyramids. I will show some too, but to actual points. Test data generation. I will first describe you our approach to test data generation. We are doing this via API, and it has some benefits, but also some drawbacks that I would like also to describe about this idea how to assert the entities in your test code, and some ideas how to extend or how to improve page object pattern in your actual development. So instead of Egypt, let's move to ancient Greece. So you may or may not be aware about the Trojan horse myth. So the Greeks were trying to invade the city of Troy, and they put their guys into the horse. So and there was this guy called Signon, which in a short story help them in some mysterious way. So in our platform, this is Trojan and Signon. So on the application level, there's a set of endpoints which allows us to generate this data, and automated tests interact with this. And what's here, I would like you to take a look that it returns the same entity. It will be crucial later. It returns the same entity that it's both in application and in our test. A little bit of code. How does it look like? It's a simple REST endpoint, which this is like a REST API, which describes core application features in their in those endpoints, so you can create some data. Of course it's enabled only on non-production environments, so you cannot use this actually on production to create some data, or you shouldn't, because there's no authorization, and it uses the same structures that actually developers use in their like the abstraction over database and stuff like this. So then it's quite nice packed over this. On a test level, there are a set of classes called Signon, which are just code abstraction over this API, and it allows the test developer to access those classes and generate some data, generate or create, because our approach is to generate, but it's really nice because it's efficient. You don't need to store anything or on your test code like some SQLs and stuff like this, and test actually knows what they want to create. So for example, there is some test that requires user with advert that's on his account in specific status. Before the test, you actually inject those data via the code, and it's abstracted over the database. You are not relying on anything. It uses the same structures that the developers designed, like storages or stuff like this. So if they're changing this underneath, it changes for this API too. Also, it's a little bit tricky because it can lead you to some problems. You receive also wider coverage, because when you are generating some data, you actually can cover more, but it's not so it's non-deterministic. So you can sometimes create some data. If you are not choosing wisely what to create and what to generate, then it can lead you some flakiness or stuff like this. Like recently we had the issue that in some really old tests there was a random category chosen for the ad we are using, and the problem was that recently it's changed on that specific scenario, that some of the categories have different logic, and the test, as it was randomly choosing the category, sometimes it was passing, sometimes it was not. Sometimes it was failing. So you must be really careful when you are using this, because it gives you like better coverage, but with some drawbacks. Next topic is I would like to focus is something I call domain identity. So when you are using and building some entities, it's actually the term comes from the domain-driven design. So it's like there's really a big hype in the development world on this. So I decided like to use it too. So all devs want to do domain-driven design. So why not to try to do domain-driven your tests in some way? So in this approach, when you are generating or creating, or you're assuming that you have some data, and then interacting with the application, you also receive the same entity that you are you expecting, and then you can make simple assert on this entity. What actually what's from, in my opinion, it's really crucial that you have the same and you have this entity, and you can make assertions on this which are really clear. And I will show you a piece of code later. How I will show you right now how does it look like. So here you've got like an example test of API. So as I described you later with this Trojan call, you generate some in this case some user, and this user is stored as expected data. It's an entity of user which contains some data like email and stuff like this. And then when you're retrieving this from the actual tested API, you receive the same entity. So it makes the assertion really clear, because as I presented you early, those entities are the same. So this assertion, it's like from one way it's really clear because you're just making assert equals, and the actual also output of this is really nice, because when there's some difference you'll receive like the git-like diff that it was expected and that's changed, and it doesn't require any additional actions. You're just passing to objects. So in order to achieve this, what I propose is to use some factories. So in this case, you have different source of your data. So it's JSON from API or some array inside your tests. You're doing some different logic on this, but finally you return the same entity which contains the same structure. It makes your this common identity from different the same common identity, but from different sources. It's when you talk about API, it's pretty clear. The more tricky is with the actual UI. So here, if you are retrieving some data from the API from the UI, then you can build those entities with a builder. So you're just passing values. It's also clear, and the syntax is pretty nice. So about page object. So actually, page object is, I think, widely known. Everyone uses it, or just want to or knows the idea. But I think there are some drawbacks in the frameworks that I seen. Some of the things could be done better. So, for example, there's always implementation of the actual elements on the page is really it's not always nice, and gives you. I think there are some ideas how to make them more clear. So, for example, what Selenium proposes you is just to define element while it's accessed. There's no structure, and in your page, just when you use it, when you want, you just find the element, and it's not stored anywhere. So what I'm trying to do when I design pages for my test, for example, let's take a login page here. So first, so it's nice to define the elements as a class variables, class instance variables. Then they are accessible all the time in your page lifetime, and then initialize them in a constructor. And then when you are using this, you are just reusing the same element that you created before. So on an example, so that's how look definition. So each element has their own type. So I will cover this topic later. So I will talk about those element types later. So as I told you before, all the elements are reusable because they are just the page instance fields. Okay, so when you define the elements, it's also pretty clear. You can even maybe not fully technical people can read this in and understand that you create new text field and assign this to some variable. And here's the usage, so it's also pretty clear how to do it. Example of the page element here you've got is like an abstraction on a actual WebDriver elements. So it's just also the pretty clear how to do it, how to interact with those elements. So example element of the that I presented before in the actual page, how it looks like. It's also abstracted over the WebDriver native methods in PHP. So you're setting and getting value. You can, when you're designing elements or have some in some library, you can then store those elements as an abstract methods, or depending on the language you're using, in order not to repeat yourself in your page or page element design. Also a little bit about page factories. So it's, I think, really nice idea, because in OLX, when we were doing automation, we are doing this for all of the countries, and we are dealing with some problems. Like, for example, sometimes there's the same page, but underneath there are some small differences that would require to have normally require to design separate pages and create separate tests. But we are trying to deal with this with the factories. So imagine you have some like a new advert page that you are creating, and it has some differences in the logic, but actual page interface is the same for each country. So instead of creating this as separate pages, you can just create generic page which will have all those interfaces defined, and each page you assign to this will cover this logic. So I will show later on how it looks in actual tests, that you have one call to the method and it can contain different logic. So also what you can achieve with those factories is that for each of the if there's some differences in parameters or in the page design, you can also pass those and returns the same page for each country or each I don't know, version. It's really doesn't depend only on the country, and then you return one single page which is common for all the tests. So that's how it looks with one interface for each country. You just doesn't care in your test design. You doesn't care about country you're invoking this. You just you are just doing you are just calling the methods, and underneath in the context of a given country, it will differ because it will assign a different class there. Okay, so I think that's all. I would like also to invite you to our tech blog. There's actually article about this, so I'm open to discussion. If you don't want to talk here, you can comment there. And I invite you to my social media if you would like to discuss.